You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Or you Facebook something, or you FedEx something. Yeah, you kickstart something. It does though segue into this sort of, funding yourself or greenlighting yourself. One of the things that I did get out of film school was sort of, even though I went grossly into debt, a lot of time to just be creative.
Hey everyone, thanks again for hitting that play button. This is episode 99 of the Dave Bullis Podcast. So before I get into the episode, I just want to let everyone know what I've been working on. I'm actually working on a Kindle ebook right now. For those of you who listened to my interview with G. Michael Hoff, which is actually up right now as a bonus episode, I've been working on and off on a Kindle ebook for a while now. And I'm going to bite the bullet and actually publish it most likely in May or June of 2016, which is this year. I'm actually working on a script too right now for Scott Meyer's Zero Draft 30. Scott was actually a podcast guest. God, it's probably about 30 or 40 episodes ago now. But for those of you who follow me on Instagram, you saw that photo that I posted of the movies I'm using as an inspiration. And I have to actually update that pic now because I actually left out a few movies, namely both Evil Deads, the first two Evil Deads, excuse me. So the next episode is episode 100. So please be on the lookout for a poster that I've actually had made up that I'll be releasing for the episode. And I'm actually going to give people the option, too, to purchase the podcast poster, the 100th episode podcast poster, if they so choose. And I think everyone will be very pleased with the guests that I have. And I'll give you one hint of who it is. He's made one of the best movies of all time. But anyways, for today's show, I have a guest who I've wanted to talk to since I started this podcast about 2 years ago. This is episode 99 with guest Morgan J. Freeman.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Joining me today is Morgan J. Freeman. Morgan holds the distinction of winning the top 3 awards at the 1997 Sundance Film Festival with his debut feature, Hurricane Streets. And Morgan is currently the executive producer of MTV's 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom. Morgan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Morgan, before I ask you, about how you got started in the film industry, spoiler alert, that was the first question. I just wanted to say, you, since I first heard about you on Ted Hope's blog, you've been a person I've shortlisted to get on this podcast. So for anyone listening to this, I am going to put that blog URL in the show notes. But that is what first, I first read about Morgan, and I was like, man, I got to talk to this guy. So Morgan has a very interesting story, which we're going to hear about. But Morgan, my first question is, how did you get started in the film industry?
Well, first, just to hit on that, I'm glad. I love Ted Hope. I love his blog, and it was such a pleasure writing that piece. So I know, I think what you're responding to, and I'm flattered to be held in such high esteem with as part of your thinking, in kicking off the blog. It's a multifaceted answer. I was always fascinated, with, I think, the production side of making movies. My dad got me a Panasonic VHS loaded camcorder when I was in 7th grade, I think it was. And that's one of those, it's almost like a shoulder type camera, that loads a VHS tape. And we would run around the neighborhood, me and my friend Tony, and shoot car chases, shoot Miami Vice type scenes, shoot stuff from kind of our favorite movies at the time, and as a hobby, just as fun. When there was a book report for school, we would act them out, act out a mythology instead of write something out. But it wasn't something I was looking at as a career for some reason. It was just something I loved doing. And it really wasn't until I was at University of Santa Barbara doing an undergraduate and was kind of forced to kind of pick a major. And I was sort of just skiing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was sort of at this point of confusion. Honestly, I was majoring in partying there, which I think was part of the Ted Hope blog. But, I went to this party school and lived in Del Playa of Isla Vista, and it was just a nonstop party. But I got a job at the newspaper there, and through the Daily Nexus kind of got involved with some creative people, and through a friend was directed to their film studies department. Like, I didn't even know you could major in film when I was at Santa Barbara. And it was just like an aha moment, like that department was waiting for me. I felt saved at school. I was like, wait a second, I can declare my major as film studies? And I know that probably sounds a bit ignorant, but I was seriously, it was like a hallelujah moment. And I just waltzed into the film studies department. I think there were only about 112 students at that time. I could be like wrong, but it was a very small department. And I could belabor this story forever, but basically that's where I got involved in learning about production. There was a Film Studies 105 class where we got to do our silent movie, and then everybody got to do their first movie with dialogue, which was such a big deal. Oh my God, they're going to be talking. And it was just a really impassioned group of people making little black and white movies on our Bolexes and, cutting on the Steambecks. And I fell in love with that part of the craft. I applied to film schools. I got into NYU, and that's kind of where I got introduced to feature filmmaking. My first job in 1994, I got a job as an intern on actually at a production company called Open City Films. It was Jason Cleo and Joanna Visante's company, and they were producing for Todd Solondz. And it was an untitled Todd Solondz movie that became Welcome to the Dollhouse. And I got a job as the intern, kind of in the production office while they were making that movie. And I worked for one of the producers, a guy named Ted Skillman. And he then brought me from the office to be a production assistant on set. And through that process, I got in with the assistant directing department. And just through a comedy of errors, people getting fired, the movie starting and stopping a few times, I ultimately ended up being the second assistant director and kind of learning through that process everything and the ins and outs about how a low-budget movie is made. And at the same time, I got to know the cast because part of my job was dealing with their schedules, their transportation, getting them to and from set. And Brendan Sexton III and I became fast friends during that process. And I started writing a script based on him that became the script for Hurricane Streets. I could go on and on, man, about like ultimately how financing came in place. I mean, it's so many right places, right times in order to even get somebody to pony up enough money. But this was all our first project. It was my first script. It was Gil's first producing. It was Galt's first producing. It was sort of unfolded in a way that you could never tell somebody else to go out and do that. But we got the money. Galt was able to find us the money to get things going, and we shot it in our backyard in the East Village, with friends. It was shot with my friends from NYU, shot over 30 days in the summer of 96. We cut it, so quickly, got it done, late September, early October, sent it off to Sundance, second week in November. Got that call, that crazy call, when you answer the phone and find out you're in dramatic competition. I'd never even been to a film festival before. I'd been to like the First Look NYU Film Festival, when this happened. And, 2 months later, we're at Sundance. You can tell me when to stop.
No, I mean, you're almost reading some of my questions because I actually did want to talk about writing the script for Hurricane Streets, but before we get into that, I wanted to say, you also touched upon something else, Morgan, that I find is that for not only Sundance movies, but other movies in general, there's always a lot of right time, right places, and there's also a lot of what I like to call, they always have that story, but it's almost like, I don't want to say the word loophole, but it's almost like they find this unique way to raise funds, and it's almost like that can never be done again. For instance, like Paranormal Activity, that was shot in Oren Patelli's house for like $14,000. I don't think that's going to be able to be replicated. Blair Witch Project, shot in the woods right across the bridge from me for what, $10,000, $30,000? I don't think that's ever going to be able to be replicated, if you kind of know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I think that the common denominator of all of those is people who greenlit themselves, that are fueled by the passion of wanting to make a movie, that use whatever's at their disposal to get it done. And I don't know how many of those translate into a movie that gets picked up. I still think you need to have the movie gods in your favor, and there's other things that have to fall in with right time, right place once you've actually made it or made enough of it to get noticed. But on the front side of that, I think it's all just passion to tell a story. And you're right. Once you've called in all those favors, or once you've done something, that took the blood, sweat, and tears and $10,000 of money that was cobbled together, now I guess it would be on Kickstarter. But back then it was just like calling people and asking if they would kick in some money because you're making it for a producer credit. But yeah, you sort of like you greenlight yourself, and you can't duplicate it. You can't. All you can tell people is like stay passionate, like stay focused, like keep trying no matter what, and a belief that like if you stay on that train, there's a destination for you.
I've talked to other producers about crowdfunding. Some of them really like the idea, while others say it's not quite there yet because they can't raise the funds that they would raise otherwise. For instance, we had Tom Malloy on here, and Tom Malloy said, okay, some films have raised $30,000 to, fund the whole movie. He said, well, to me, $30,000 is a producer's fee, or, $10,000, a location fee. So he's, I think crowdfunding is basically just going to keep increasing from here. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Morgan?
I mean, I don't have any personal experience. I've given to a lot of friends. So I don't understand sort of, I know you have to reach a certain platform on Kickstarter before the money's released. And so what that money goes towards, I've seen a project, my buddy Paul Starkman and then Jamin O'Brien, who's a friend of mine all the way back to Santa Barbara, who, first AD'd my first shorts and then Hurricane Streets, and then went on and produced, Desert Blue and Just Like the Sun, and has had an illustrious career of another 20 indie films. But he is doing this movie Wheels with my buddy Paul Starkman, also from UCSB. And their Kickstarter thing was all about development, was all about raising this certain amount of money so that they could put themselves in and, get the script written, get a sizzle created, get packages ready to attract cast. And I like that because you're able to be part of something, that's a finite amount that's giving somebody what they need to then go sell their project. And I like being part of that. I like being part of the fabric of, you don't need anything back. I don't need a signed copy of the DVD or anything, all those different tiers, which I think's fun. But I sort of like it because that's the part that's hard, as you know, and as I know, like there's no pay for that kind of work when you're, blocking off time to go home and just trying to be creative. And so I sort of like the idea that your community and your friends can all just chip in a little bit, to finance that. I don't know how I think about it with the Zach Braff movie or where other things are fully financed if they reach the 3 million mark. Like, I can't find a problem with it because it's still like, utilizing technology and utilizing crowdfunding. So I guess that's my, again, I haven't used it, so I haven't really spent lots of time thinking about it. I do when it pops up, I'm like, ooh, I like this. I like the idea that people who otherwise might not be able to get themselves to, the next step here can get some support.
I agree with you, Morgan. I really don't have a problem either with like the Zach Braff thing as well. I got into it with some of my friends on Facebook about that, and my view of it is this. A lot of people never heard of Kickstarter before the whole Zach Braff thing. He was at a screening, and he actually said to the audience, he said, how many here have never donated to a Kickstarter before, and our project was your first Kickstarter you've ever donated to? And almost every hand went up. So, it seemed to do a lot more good than bad. I know some people say like, well, don't donate your money to rich people on Kickstarter, but I still think though that he really got the word out. So then other people then can say, oh, because I mean, now Morgan, Kickstarter is like it's in the lexicon now. So if you say hey man, I really gotta go on Kickstarter. I gotta, go on Kickstarter to raise some funds. Even if they're on Indiegogo or GoFundMe or whatever, they still use the word Kickstarter to you know what I mean, to
Right.
sort of mean all of crowdfunding. It's like when you say, a Q-tip instead of a cotton swab.
Yeah, I mean it is. I guess that's like anything, like a Google or you Facebook something or you FedEx something. Yeah, you kickstart something. Um, the it does though segue into this sort of funding yourself or greenlighting yourself. One of the things that I did get out of film school was sort of, even though I went grossly into debt, a lot of time to just be creative. In a full-time job kind of at NYU, to think about screenwriting, to think about story, to think about location, to think about casting, to think about, natural light. And I feel like within that sort of arena, the creativity that when we do make our first short, or when we are just working with our friends, or working for the love of the excitement of, oh my God, we're gonna mount a camera into the back of the car and follow these bikes, or the police are shutting down LaGuardia Street for us, like this is amazing, or Lafayette, like that's the stuff that I used to love. That with a student film permit, like the cops would come and stop traffic, like because we're making a movie, like that excitement. And so even when people are getting their passion projects going, and Indiegogo or GoFundMe or any of these are part of like allowing them to go do 2 days of shooting without somebody giving them notes, without somebody telling them, we need so-and-so actor because we have to sell it in Germany and Austria in order to get you this, like without you having to compromise your creative left, right, and center just to get your money, just to get your shoot days. That's the part of, I it's like a soul killing part of the business. It like crushes that love of movie making. And so for me, anything that can help prop up or support somebody who just gets a crack at going out and like making it the way they'd make it if somebody wasn't telling them what to do. Given a lot of that might be crap. Well, shit, a lot of the other stuff I do is crap. A lot of my shorts for, like, I don't know why something falls together and works, or why when I wrote Hurricane Streets, like, I didn't have any outline or know much more except for I was going to have teenagers peddling candy. Like, that's all I knew. It was a kid on a bike outside of a school selling shoplifted candy. Like, and some are charmed, and I think some aren't. But if you don't get that chance, no one's ever going to know.
I know exactly what you mean, because when I was raising funds for one of my projects, it was just we had financing, then it dropped out, financing, then it dropped out, and by like the third or fourth time, I was just like, I can't. This emotional roller coaster that I'm on, where I just want to be able to put some money into an escrow account and say, finally, we can go move on with this thing, because I'm so anxious to shoot it. And and you start thinking about it all the time. You start thinking, oh my God, am I going to be able to actually do this? Do I not have enough money? Is financing going to drop out again? I mean, it's just all that stuff. And eventually what I did was I actually went to Indiegogo and I raised some funds that way. And I raised most people didn't know what it was at that time, because this was like 2010. So people would give me money through PayPal, and then PayPal shut us down because because they didn't know what that was. So you're like, oh my God, come on. So yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from, Morgan. Getting back to Hurricane Streets, I wanted to ask you about writing the script. Now, you said that, that was your first script. What were some of the challenges you faced when you were writing Hurricane Streets?
I shudder to say that it was almost challenge free. Like and nothing else I've written has had that kind of flow where it just kind of came out. I was living in the East Village, was going to NYU. I had Brendan kind of in my head as a bit of a muse. I had this idea I was pulling from my life. So it was, you get this one shot, I think, at least at like the adolescent storyline for me. And I did do this. Like, I was shoplifting Now and Laters and blow pops and football pencils. They used to make these two-toned color football pencils, that for some reason I left to steal, and I would sell those at school. So I would steal them and sell them for a quarter. So I modeled this character, Marcus, this bit of a young socialist, who kind of leveled the playing field. The kids that couldn't afford to pay full price for something, he would steal and sell to them at half the cost you'd buy it in the store. And, with this belief that he was doing good, that he was kind of, fucking the system that didn't take care of people who can't afford to pay the system's prices. They won't miss a pair of shoes, and this kid gets a pair of shoes he couldn't normally have afforded, and I make a little bit of money in the middle. So I knew I had this character, and then I had the East Village. I had these locations. I loved the school near me. I loved all the streets. I knew the bar I wanted to shoot in for where Marcus's grandma lived. Lucy's is where I went. So it was this excitement of like pulling from my past and then pulling from the locations I lived around, that it just gave this dense fabric. And I knew I wanted to do this kind of sort of coming of age love story. I don't know what roller, that was it. I would just sit there in my 5-story walk up on 11th Street, and I'd play Bob Dylan on a 5 CD changer that I had, and I had like 5 Dylan CDs in at all time. That's how the title became Hurricane, because it was actually from that Story of the Hurricane song kept playing, and I was going, oh my God, this is an emotional hurricane. I was like, these kids are caught. And it was called Hurricane until after Sundance, when the movie actually based on Hurricane Reuben Carter was coming out, and the Denzel Washington movie, and I had to change the title to Hurricane Streets. But it really just came out. Like it came out. I had friends that gave me great notes to kind of help sculpt some of the subplots and to give it a little more shape. It's been criticized for not really having an ending, or I've heard a movie where nothing happens. It was definitely, I was writing it with the excitement of making it. I'd write it and go, oh, we're going to shoot that scene on First Avenue. Oh, we're going to be in Tompkins Square Park and they're going to run through the grass there. Like, oh, we're going along the water side and he's going to skip rocks into the, like, it was that kind of excitement that, like, I want that back. Like, I don't have that right now.
So, not to jump too far ahead, though, but are you writing another script right now?
I have so many beginnings of screenplays that it's like, it's almost laughable. Yes, I don't, and I have a few different things, and I haven't made that commitment to one story to really go into that with the passion that this is what I want to do next. What I do know is I'm not looking at the sort of director for hire things right now. I've talked about the Soul Crushers. That you pour so much in, at least I guess until like my movies, the 3 movies that I wrote and directed, Hurricane Streets, Desert Blue, and Just Like the Sun, while Hurricane Streets won all the awards and while all 3 of them found distribution, none of them made enough money to turn me into somebody that a lot of the financiers or a lot of the big producers out there say, we want his next movie because it's going to do X, Y, and Z. And I get that game, that you got to make people money for them to want to spend money. So the movies I do, which, I think the last one was a Misha Barton thriller that ultimately for Paramount's Lifetime, it ended up being a TV movie. But there's still the passion of making a low-budget movie. I mean, I did have to work with them, the cast that they were providing and the budget, obviously, and days that were provided all had to work with the cast and what that meant for foreign and all the pre-sales. And without the clout to say I'm doing it my way or I'm doing it the way, I don't feel like I'm that guy that, I actually want to strike that I want to do it my way, but I want to work with a team that's putting the creative first. I don't necessarily want to sit there and say that actor brings us $250,000 in those 2 territories, so plug them in. It's so hard, but I am someone that I have the opportunity and I get to make a movie with all these tools and toys, and I'm like, let's do it. Like, let's make it work. Let's try to make this work. Like, let's go for it. We're making a movie. Like, let's not take ourselves too seriously. Like, there's still a camera, and we're still going to get to shoot for 28 days, and there's some stunts, and we get to have fun. Let's make a movie. But you end up pouring so much into that because it doesn't matter what movie it is. I'm pouring all the excitement and all the energy and all those overnighters, and it's 2 degrees out and the warmies aren't really working in my hands or my boots, but we're making a movie. And at the end of the day, when it doesn't really work out, or you lose control of the edit, or whatever it is, when you realize it's a commodity that ultimately doesn't make the people who put their money into it their money back, so people are bummed, and like, it just kind of kills the passion a little bit. So that's a long way of saying I want to greenlight myself again. So I'm writing these sort of characters and kind of looking for, here I am, I'm 46. What movie would speak to me now if I could go make it with my friends now in Brooklyn, in my backyard? And so that's why I'm focusing my energies is trying to get back to the love of it and finding the right size story, the right character. It's going to be very OCD. I can tell you the movie is going to be about someone who binge thinks and is guided by a lot of bright ideas, unchecked with friends and family, that lead to comedy of errors. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of where I'm at today with writing and with filmmaking.
You touched upon this briefly, but that's something that I see more and more of, which is, how do you package this movie? So if you have a script and, okay, let's for instance take the movie Aloha. They said, Emma Stone's in it and she's supposed to be playing a half Japanese woman. And the defense that some people use is, well, there isn't a well-known Japanese actress in America who could carry this. I see things from both point of views of that whole situation, because even my friends in Japan who are they're 100% Japanese, even that's the first, when they're going to finance their films, to Japanese investors, that's the first thing they ask is who's in the movie, what actors that we know are going to be in this movie. And he, in that particular case, he would say, well, I want to get this person and this person. And they're like, I've never heard of these people. How would they don't have a track record of being bankable. Why would I invest my money in this? Which, kind of takes us back to what we were talking about with crowdfunding. Because, if you do make a movie for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you don't need to worry, quote unquote, about an ROI to any investors, because people had donated their money in exchange for a perk or a thank you credit or what have you. And that sort of allows you to cast who you want, if you know what I mean, Morgan.
Absolutely. And I almost see them as mutually exclusive. Again, I feel like there's the love of the craft and then there's business. And obviously movies are giant business, and there's so much money to be made that, sometimes it doesn't, it might supersede the actual craft on some of these. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I would love to be the director for hire on a big movie, and would never sort of scoff at that. But I think that's a unique career where you're able to be a Wes Anderson, where you're able to be Quentin Tarantino, where you're able to, let's take a step even away from that, like a Jim Jarmusch, who stands so strongly by his creative that nobody's given him a note. Like, I love that. I wish my time at NYU, and Sarah Driver, who, is his partner, was one of my directing teachers, and she brought Jim in and Tom DiCillo at the time, and it was so refreshing to hear these people who, again, just love filmmaking. And it's like, look, if I can't do the movie the way I want to do it with my friends and family, I'm going to make music. I'm going to have a farm, or I'm going to do. Part of me just, if you ever segue into television, like, what I love about 16 and Pregnant, and he's doing these documentaries, is, I fell into this with a group of friends, and it became our day job. So I don't have to try to go figure out how to do a director for hire thing or a straight to DVD thing, or hope that I can turn this project possibly into the next big thing with these guys, to pay the bills. And what it allows for is the ability to really think about, okay, if I'm going to do a movie, or a indie TV series, which is something that we're developing too, which, now with obviously the Hulus and the Netflix and the Amazons, and my good friend Andrea Sperling finally knocked it out of the park with Jill Soloway and Transparent. She produced Desert Blue, and we went to UC Santa Barbara back in the late 80s. She's part of the clique I was talking about earlier. She's someone else who stayed on the train for 20 years and then boom, overnight. But no, it was 20 years staying focused on like creative integrity of stuff and making movies that were based on, people's passion and love for characters and people's passion and love for independent films. And maybe none of them skyrocketed into, making megabucks, but that led to the right time with the right project that became, Transparent. Again, she could put that in much better words, and I'm kind of projecting what I see on her process, but I love that. No notes. Like, from what I hear, Amazon gives very little notes because they're making, they're shepherding people who would, turn that into an indie film, and they don't need to give notes on a movie that's going to Sundance. Like, love it. Like, and I feel like maybe the combination of these other outlets that don't, that are a bit more unbridled, and that a lot of creative people are flocking towards, and the Kickstarters and the and the Indiegogos, and like, I don't know, it feels like a renaissance of creative storytelling.
Yeah, I concur. Usually people point to the 1970s and the early 80s for like the absolute best filmmaking in human history, even though it hasn't been with us that long. But because filmmaking in terms of human history is like a little blip.
Right.
But late 70s and 80s. I mean, that's where you had all the awesome directors come on the scene, like Cronenberg and Scorsese and all them, and they were just making whatever they wanted to.
Right.
Like Taxi Driver and everything else. And
well, even go back. I totally agree with you. If you go back to the American directors and even look at Easy Rider and look at The Graduate and look at Five Easy Pieces and like you said, like Taxi Driver, but like where are those movies? Like, those are the movies that spoke to the anti-hero and sort of like these characters that you kind of couldn't help but watch go on these self-destructive journeys. But the fabric of those films were, and I think those are the inspirations for so many American filmmakers or filmmakers around the world that maybe came up with me. But I don't know where that type of, like, I don't think those movies would get made today, would they? I don't know.
Yeah, I think if they were to get made today, they would have to be made on the extreme cheap, and it would have to be crowdfunded. Because like if I wrote or you wrote the screenplay for Taxi Driver and gave it to somebody today, I think they would literally look at it and just go, I think we should call the police on this person. Because I mean, he's going to assassinate the governor, and I mean, my God, if you wrote a screenplay like that today, who knows? But I still have hope, though, that we can sort of overcome and go back into this just, no sort of limits, if you know what I mean. Like, no, just get back into just letting creativity stream. And, I think we're probably on the cusp of that, because, I mean, there's so many different ways you can distribute a movie nowadays. And there's not really too many gatekeepers anymore, unless, of course, you want to go the mainstream Hollywood route.
Some of those movies, too, I completely agree with you. And even, thinking of the Easy Rider's Raging Bull book, but some of the stories behind a lot of those movies where the financiers involved thought it was the end of the world, or even Goodfellas, it was like, what on earth does Brando have in his mouth? Like terrified of what we just did. And, they created a genre, like they changed the filmmaking as we know it. Like, I think Easy Rider even felt like it was out of control. What is this movie? Like, who are these people? Like, what's going on? And how much drugs do they do? Like there's that obviously that can't happen today. It's too reckless and crazy, but there's still something about people who love making movies allowed to do what they want to do.
Yeah, it's I remember those stories as well. I remember hearing the stories about Easy Rider and also what that did for cinema too, because that sort of set the tone for a while there. And I read screenplays nowadays. I always like to find out where people's inspirations came from. because you can sort of get a grasp of how they're going to tell the story, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes there is a very the plot is screaming at you in the face, or sometimes the plot is sort of secondary to what these characters are doing, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So I know we were talking about Hurricane Streets, and we kind of got off on there, but so you wrote the script for Hurricane Streets, and you found the funding, as you said, by calling people, by being in the right place at the right time. You had the certain people attached to the project. So when you actually started to actually produce Hurricane Streets, I just wanted to know, what are some of the directing tips that you could sort of pass on that you used during the movie?
I know that I had certain shots and certain directors that inspired me. There was stuff I knew from the beginning of the movie, because I loved the ending of The Graduate. I loved what that shot of them on the back of the bus sort of meant, like now what, and the expressions on their face. So I kind of knew what I was building towards directorially, and that I wanted this moment of them on a train leaving the city, but the expressions on the face don't match. It's like the dreams coming true physically. And so I kind of knew I was inspired and borrowed by that. And the 400 Blows, I just love the running through the streets, and I know that inspires so many people, but I just loved the ending of that, and the long run down the beach and the look to the camera. And I knew I wanted some running stuff. I knew I wanted to just run with Brendan, run with his character Marcus, just run. And so, there's a few sequences of that, the stealing and then trying to get to the train, where we just knew it was going to be, we didn't have the mega tools at all on that. So we're outside of a car, just Kike, Enrique Chediak, who's gone on to shoot so many amazing movies, who I went to school with and shot that and won the cinematography award at Sundance for it, was just on the side of a van with the door open, And for some of it, he rigged a bungee cam, which back at that time was, we just took these black bungee cords and made a little bit of a cross section so the camera could be lightly mounted, and they're hooked onto the side of the frame of the car. Gives them a little extra, shake resistance. But so that's technically, but the other side of the directing, and I guess 90% of it is that, 90% is casting, 90% shot selection, 90% acting. But I used to, it's I learned this lesson with a short film where I sort of felt on my shorts, that if the actors said their lines right, and they were in focus and they were where they were supposed to be, we're making the movie, because I was so excited that we're making the movie and we got the shot and they said their lines, and I would put the short film together, and while the story was there, it lacked a certain element. It lacked the emotion of true, honest human being. And it was pointed out to me that everything that I felt was making a movie was really just getting to the starting line. Getting to the starting line, meaning the production design's there, the actor's there, they've memorized their lines, it's lit, you've chosen a camera angle. Now what's going to happen? And that's when I started getting into looking for the truthful performance, looking for the honesty and the energy, having that relationship with actors now that is about directing attention to what's really going on here. Why are we all here? And it's not that I know everything. I just feel if I'm creative host to a group of people who are all interested in a common goal, making this as best as it can be, now the conversation starts. We're all here. What are we really doing? And that suddenly for me became directing. And, so it's less telling people what to do, and it's more creating an environment for people to do what they're good at, and having them trust you enough to be creative, at your creative dinner party or whatever you want to call it. One of the things even a Jim Jarmusch would say, that is everything. The other half of it's the money that finances that, but what you just described there is the thing you can never let the money get into. You can never start compromising those things for the money. You can never take an outside note based on money on that stuff, because the magic and the beauty of the whole thing and why we do it is right there at that sort of, creative party. So that's kind of my take on directing, I guess.
I think it's very well put, inviting everyone to sort of collaborate on the project, because, I'm always fascinated to find everyone's different directing style. Some people come from the Woody Allen background, which is, I am very hands off on all of this, and you guys act. And I sort of, and because every actor who's ever worked with Woody Allen, for instance, they've always said he's a very good director, but he's very hands off everything. And he's sort of, you know what I mean? And then the other half of that is like a Christopher Nolan or a Kubrick, where they're getting like 100 takes of the same thing. So it's, it's always, I always find that interesting, just to see everyone's different directing style. But no, I think I know exactly where you're coming from, Morgan, with the invitation to collaborate. That's what I found too on the things that I've done. Is the more time you have to collaborate with people, the more ideas that they bring to the table as well.
Yeah, and being open to that stuff, that there may be things outside of my awareness, outside of how I might do it, outside of, any of my plans and intentions, that the elements are here for that to happen. I'm like, who am I to get in the way of that? Like, sometimes it's the expression that happens after someone says cut that makes it into the movie. And it's like, even if their expression was like, Morgan's driving me crazy, when I suddenly need that eye roll and that like look of disgust, and it works perfectly in the film repurposed, then it's like, I'm clueless of exactly what's being, like what's being shot here, in the sense that people will say, take that scene you think is the one that's going to win you the Oscar while you're shooting, cut, throw it on the floor. Don't even cut it. Don't even cut it. I find all that stuff really interesting, and so like I it's not that I'm like I don't, thinking about like, you can obsess over takes for so long. Like, I have this thing in my head, and that you're going to arrive at your mark there. Focus is going to hit, and this line is going to be, when you get to the third syllable of this word, that's when you're going to catch the gaze. Right? Because the last 3 words of that are going to fall on her in a way that's going to shift everything. Because now she knows why you're here. All right, guys, let's go. Like, that's not my job to get involved in that stuff. Like, the actors bring this amazing craft when they're in that zone, and when that energy is there. And I am, my job was having the conversations that got everybody here. And so it's weird. So if I can let go of what I think in my head is supposed to happen within that frame, and just sit back and witness what happens, and it's usually I need me and maybe a producer and a script supervisor, and we're kind of huddled there. And I like to actually go, wow, that felt real. That felt real to you guys. I know that's not what isn't, but that's what I listen to and go, we're done. We're done. Like, and the script supervisor is like, well, actually said that wrong, and this line was left out, and it was really important to the, So I don't. I guess there's a humility thing there that I've seen what happens when I try to force my ego or force what I think should happen on everything, and it doesn't really work out. And I've seen what happens when I kind of let go, and it tends to work out. So take what you will from that.
I think that's very well said, Morgan. I understand completely where you're coming from. I've seen friends of mine direct different things, and usually they do try to do too many takes sometimes, and then people start getting like, oh my God, how many times do we need to show me getting out of a car, for instance, But yeah, I mean, I guess you got to figure out what works for you is what I usually take away from that.
Yeah.
But
hey, one more thing on that. I know you, but
sure.
Just on this idea of takes, we would look at how, I guess there were some places where I was just like shooting too much, and it's like, we didn't have the budget to keep, we're shooting film, and it's like, this is expensive, and it's also taking time. So you're wasting time on a low budget movie, and you're burning through the takes. And then I would end up looking at the movie afterwards and seeing how many times we used the first or second take. And it was so often that that's the take that went in the show, and there's something to that, like trusting that, we did a couple takes, and I can't really tell you what was wrong with it. If I can't really, I just, there was nothing wrong with it. Like, move on. So there you go.
You actually were able to get Hurricane Streets, to Sundance. and it ended up winning all the top 3 awards at the 1997 Sundance Film Festival. So the movie still, to my knowledge, has been released. I remember reading another movie this happened to, and it was called Colin Fitz Lives. And basically, it got hung up in distribution for years and years and years. Now, I know the whole story, Morgan, but, just to hear what happened after Sundance, would you mind just telling the listeners, what happens after you won Sundance?
Well, it was released. It just didn't make any money. I can tell you what happened was during Sundance, we had different people kind of interested, but no real offers. Obviously, that changed with the awards. And you know what? I'd have to fact check myself. There may have been like some really low offers, like at that time, something like $50,000, but we believe in the movie and we're going to put our money into promoting it and doing a really great release, because it would mean a lot for us to have a Sundance winning movie. And at the time, that would have been like a Lionsgate, which in '97 was not a big company at all. I can't remember what they were called before Lionsgate, but anyway, I guess the point is we were like, Cassian Elwes, who's kind of a master of selling movies, and
oh yeah, he's been on the show.
There you go. Oh yeah, you know what? I saw that. So Cassian was our sales rep, and he was like, let's play out the festival, and the idea was, let's see how it goes at awards. So when we won those awards, which was just like, it's just such a bizarre moment, when they call out your name or they call out the movie's name, and it was a game changer with regard to interest, and we got more offers came in, but the biggest offer came from MGM UA, and this might have been a miscalculation. I think we're a tiny movie, and here comes this big studio, that's got the James Bond franchise that they're ramping up, and they want to get into the indie film place. They didn't have an indie division, so it was MGM UA. And I was literally like, oh shit, does that mean the lion's going to roar at the beginning of the movie? Like, are we going to have that, like, like, I was like so excited about that lion. But they were also offering the most money. And it was like hard. And they had the passion. Like, the guys there had the passion. They sat down with us and like they really were talking about, trying to put this out during the awards season, like to look for always to play the sort of indie darling movie, and an October release date, which we'd wanted, and a really big P&A commitment to the movie. I think it was $12 million or $15 million at that time, which was huge. I might have got that number wrong. But it was big at the time that they were going to like spend that much money on the movie. So we went ahead and did that and made that deal. And there was all that excitement and cutting the trailer and like, it was an exciting time. And I don't know what happened. We got a call sometime late summer, because it was going to be 1 full year, or not 1 full year. What would that be? 10 months out of Sundance, when it would come out, in that October month. So sometime in the summer, we got a call from the guys at MGM UA saying that, that it was actually good news, that instead of like rolling the movie out, and starting in New York and LA, and then, starting on 3 screens and then going to 10 and then top 10 markets and, doing what we were going to do in October to kind of build, we're going to go big in January. We're going to open on X number of screens in January. And I was like stoked. I was like, that sounds awesome. Like they're going, and I didn't know that January was like the dumping ground. I didn't know that that's a horrible time to come out. I didn't know that pushing a movie 3 months and like scrapping an entire promotional plan when we've already done all the interviews and all of the press stuff is going to come out and promote a movie that's not there. Like, so I didn't get that a decision had been made to kind of dump the movie, and a decision had been made to spend that commitment in like a couple weeks, because contractually they had to spend all this money. I didn't know that they were blasting national ads places where the movie wasn't opening to spend the money. I mean, again, this is what I heard. Like, I don't have any proof, and you know, the team at that company's long moved on, you know, the marketing. But so what happened is it was released like kind of in January, made no money, was just out for a couple weeks, and that was it. It's sad. It was like, I mean, I was still excited to see it on the screen, but the other thing I heard was Titanic was on the verge of coming out, and MGM needed to put everything they had into the James Bond movie at that time, and our film was kind of like stuck right in there. Ironically, there was a movie from Marcy Playground called Sex and Candy was in Hurricane Streets, and that became the number one single when Titanic Celine Dion hit. So we did have like this one thing that blew up because it was from the soundtrack of Hurricane Streets while that Titanic soundtrack was going crazy. But I mean, that's how it worked for us. And I guess I tell that story when I say we might have made a mistake, is that I think a smaller distributor that really, you know, wasn't going to have to compete against the Titanic, that our movie wasn't going to fall into a slate of super big, giant celebrity-driven blockbusters. A company that dedicated itself and its bread and butter was about trying to push an indie darling to the next level. I think we should, in hindsight, we should have taken that and not gone for the big blingy roaring lion and the big paycheck. But it's hard, man, when you've put everything into the movie and you're in debt and you have college debt and you have investors. Still, when someone offers you that big deal, I mean, it was we couldn't say no. So,
you know, MGM, the Bond movie you're talking about was Tomorrow Never Dies, and I'm, you know, after Goldeneye, I'm guessing they probably thought it was going to do pretty well because, you know, Goldeneye was, you know, the reboot of the Bond franchise and or the resurgence, I should say, and then, you know, with Tomorrow Never Dies, it sort of was like, you know, it's not a bad movie. It's just not a good movie, or bad Bond, good Bond, you know. I see exactly what you're saying, though. You know, when I said Hurricane Streets wasn't released, because I know it wasn't released on DVD, or was it released on VHS?
It was VHS, and it was the year before, it was the last crop before everything was DVD. And that was also a horrible place to be because we couldn't get them to move the movie into DVD. So it died a slow VHS death like over the early 2000s. It just died. You can get it now on DVD. Someone put it out, and I ordered a couple copies on Amazon. But it was very challenging to not be able to at least share the movie or not be able to like be part of Netflix. You know, I think even on Netflix, for a while until they sort of gutted a lot of that stuff out of there. It was just one of those things you could like continue to say you wanted, and maybe if enough people tried to rent it, like they would buy a couple copies.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out on Amazon. I didn't know it was released on DVD.
Yeah, I'm looking right now because I saw, oh my God, DVDs. I actually have one here because I was like, how can I get some? I ordered them for our friends on the movie too.
So, you know, I want to talk, you know, about all your current projects, you know, because you work in reality TV now.
Yeah, there it is.
And I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm just saying it's there. They put it out under their it was MGM. They finally released it as a I don't know what collection they call it, but anyway, sorry I interrupted you.
No worries. You know, you work on reality TV now, you know, as the executive producer on MTV 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom. So, you know, how did you find your way, you know, into being an executive producer now in reality TV?
I was finishing a movie that ended up coming. I just sort of choked on that. I was finishing a movie. It was called Piggy Banks while we were shooting it. It was released by Lionsgate, called Born Killers, and I actually loved the process of making that movie. That was actually I don't know if anybody ever saw it, but it was shot. We shot in Salt Lake City in 2003, and I was finishing that movie out in LA, and I had my dog out there with me, and I was going up to the Mulholland and Dog Run every day, and I bumped into an old friend of mine from Santa Barbara, Craig Borders, and I hadn't seen him in years. And he said he'd been shooting and directing on some MTV stuff, Road Rules and whatnot. I'd heard he became like a shooter on these reality TV shows. And he said that he just had a meeting at MTV, and they're going to try to do a new form of a show where it's a reality show, and they tried to do it in Beverly Hills. They couldn't get access to the school, so it looks like it's going to be down in Laguna Beach. And what they want to do is a reality show with real people, but they want it to look like a scripted show. So we're going to do like a multi-cam approach to directing, 3 or 4 cameras, and get all the shots that a narrative director would get. And I had done some TV stuff too. I directed Dawson's Creek, and that was one of the points of reference. So I went in, and he said, dude, you should come in because they're literally looking for a person just like you. And I was still in debt, too. I was finishing this movie, and I still had this debt, and I was sitting in this dog park. And I said, I'll go in there. I went in and met with Gary Auerbach, who had the deal at MTV at the time. And the show became Laguna Beach, which was kind of a game changer for MTV, just with that look and feel and style. And I spent 9 months down in Laguna with this awesome team of people and got a nice weekly paycheck and got to live by the beach and play with all these kind of new high-tech, HD cameras, and we did a lot of Steadicam work and different, we got to apply a lot of creativity to the show. I really liked it. And so I did that for the first season, and then I went and made Just Like the Sun, because I'd been writing that screenplay and shot that back in New York and North Carolina, and did some festival stuff with that. And what happened was I got a call. I thought it was a joke. I got a call about doing a documentary about teen pregnancy. And I was like, me? I just didn't think I would be, the first choice to sort of try to tackle this kind of, it's all they were kind of saying. And, I had done I'd also done a show called Maui Fever that was my own series set in Hawaii, and that was just one season of a show, but we sort of played with the same look and feel. And apparently the execs at MTV, Tony DeSanto and Liz Gately at the time, they were the execs over these 2 shows. And Tony went to NYU, and Tony's a huge film buff. And I basically talked to their team, and they said, look, Morgan, we know your career. We know the movies you've done. Everything you've written and that you're passionate about is about teenagers up against the odds, teenagers in compromised situations trying to overcome obstacles. Teenagers from broken families trying to fit in, trying to make their way. And we want to look at teen pregnancy as this. We want to look at shows of teenagers who have found themselves in these compromised situations where their families aren't sure what to do, that their families might be riddled or broken, and how are they going to persevere? How are they going to move through this? And we want this unvarnished look, but we also want the storytelling that we know you've put together through sort of Laguna and through the Maui show. And it made sense to me suddenly, I get the story I'm telling now. I get what they want. And that was 16 and Pregnant, which I really thought was going to be sort of an anthology, the idea of multiple seasons or the idea of a spinoff, give me a break. I thought we were, it just wasn't on the horizon at all. And I don't know, we can talk about right time, right place for certain things, but when 16, when 16, it wasn't one of their big marquee shows at the time. It's not like they were going big. They were scared because they were tackling a bit of a taboo issue. And MTV was stepping into a polarized issue, into getting into teen pregnancy. It can be dark, it can be tough. It's not really where the network has been. But they also knew the stats, and Lauren Dolgen, who came up with the idea, knew that there were 750,000 teen pregnancies in our country each year. It's where are those stories? Who's like that's a lot. That's 1 in 4. So what happened when the show came out at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, it just struck a chord. Like the ratings, there wasn't even any promotion. It just like it just struck a chord in like a zeitgeist kind of moment. And the Bristol Palin thing was going on with the election. The Jamie Lee Spears thing was going on. Juno had just sort of cleaned up. So it was one of these right place, right time, right ideas. And I mean, we're 8 years later, and we did 16 and Pregnant episodes, 6 seasons of the first Teen Mom. We're at 7 or seasons into the second. Like, it's kind of an amazing ride, but I don't. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it did. More.
How are you going to edit this down? You're going to like sit around and you'll pull some shit out of here, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
I actually have I actually have an engineer who does that for me.
Okay,
but
good.
his name's Gary. It's funny. It's in a small world kind of instance. I actually did tech work one time for Ryan Cabrera, who was on Laguna Beach. Yeah, you know Ryan?
Well, he came in. I do, but he came in season. He came in season 2. I'm pretty sure as like a larger character.
Okay.
But I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, he I actually did tech work for him one time, and he was doing it was like him and like I think he had a backup drummer or something, but it was just like an acoustic type deal. And he showed up and he was so tired, and like he was like barely functioning. And like after the show though, he was a lot more alive. Like he was much more talkative. Whereas before I was like, this guy doesn't want to say anything. But because I had to talk to him, I was like, do you need anything special like cues? I mean, you get the writer, but you don't get. But I just want to talk to just to make sure, because it was just him and the other guy. But the show went pretty well, and I just want to mention that.
Right.
But yeah, that meant that that's sort of like another right place, right time. We were able to sort of get this job because of the people and to the listeners of this show, they know something I always say is your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. I always screw it up, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've burnt many bridges. I know what the net result of burning a bridge is that when that next opportunity comes around on the other side of the bridge, like it's not coming to you. So I also know what it's like when you do right by people and you do the right thing. And despite whatever happens to a show, I did a show that was canceled and I was upset that it was canceled, but I didn't take it out on the network that it was canceled. Like I didn't do what in the past I've done when maybe the movie wasn't handled in the way I wanted it to be handled. So I let the people know very clearly how disappointed I was. Those people didn't tend to want to be back in business with me. So learning that through the late 90s and early 2000s, when these opportunities came around, I just tried something different. And what's happened there is I kind of feel like I fell into a way of working with people that is more right-sized. It's much more of a two-way street, and it's allowed for opportunities to come back to me that I don't think would have come to me had I done what I used to be really good at, which was torch the bridge. And I think with Tony and Liz at MTV, the projects that we did together, they created an environment where when this idea came to their desk, like I was someone they thought of, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's really been a dream job. I think having a base here, our offices are over in the West Village, and I've worked with the same crew of people since 2008 on this, and we've sort of built a production company during this time where we have various projects across different places, and I mentioned the sort of indie scripted series. My partner on the show, Dia Sokol, Savage because she married a guy named Garrett Savage, who I went to UC Santa Barbara with, to bring it all back around. She's a mumblecore filmmaker and produces the Joe Swanberg movies, and has just a lot of experience making highly creative stuff on a very small budget. So the two of us, who were probably the unlikely partners for a big Viacom franchise, coming from kind of indie filmmaking roots, are now looking at like, okay, how do we get back to our roots? Like I told you about with the screenplays and ideas I'm working on, and sort of harness the energy of this franchise, and sort of redirect it into making some passion projects, and I think we might be successful at that. I guess I love this franchise, but I can't sit here and tell you that I want to go make, the Real Housewives of this, or, the Love and Hip Hop of that. And my reality agent will yell at me for saying that, but that's not my business. Yeah, but it's not like my passion. We fell into this and we love it, and I'm grateful for it, and I love the stories. I kind of just ride in the wave.
That's one of the original questions I asked in the beginning was, about, your new screenplays and stuff. And, I could tell, that writing was one of your passions. And I mean, because again, I read your bio pretty in depth. I could tell, writing was one of your passions. And I know you probably are working on something like a little pet project, secret project that you're sort of waiting for the right time for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting. Sometimes I open up Final Draft and like, all right, like just the fact that I opened it this morning and maybe wrote exterior dot, I'm like, we're moving forward. Like, but you're spot on, and I know I have to carve out a little more time. I know the way I write, and it's slow, but it's also immersive. It's like having days where you can just be, where you can make some coffee, kind of be with a pad, or pad meaning a writing pad, or work on a scene for a second, and then, it's going to sound like a horrible Lisa Loeb music video, but I don't know, go grab a guitar and just like goof off for a minute, and then go back to the computer, and then maybe get a snack, and then like, and over like days, as long as a couple pages come out of it, something starts to develop. And with this franchise, and I also have a 9-month-old daughter, who's just such a blessing, and have this kind of full work and home life. It's hard to figure out like where to put that, like where is its place going to be, and when is it going to get a more central seat at the table. And I think it's coming. Like I can kind of feel 8 years into this that this is going to be a beautiful thing to have happened, and getting out of student debt is a beautiful thing. And,
I hope to be there one day myself.
Oh God. They send you a letter that's like, hello, Morgan, this is to inform you that your student loans are completely paid off. You never have to send us another penny, period.
Did you frame that letter?
I need to find it, because I know it should be framed. And I haven't.
When I get that letter, I am framing it right next to my diploma, and I am just gonna say, was this worth it? And I already know the answer to that, and everyone who listens to this knows the answer to that. And because I didn't go to film school. I went to a business school, and it just one of those stories that I've told pieces of it throughout here. But one day when I do a crowdfunding campaign, I have a whole ideas of how I'm gonna sort of push it out. And one of the ideas is I'm going to actually go into detail about different little stories and stuff that'll come up organically. But that's one of them, is my my journey through college and student loan debt.
I don't know how I ended up coming out of such an expensive school in a trade where most people don't really want to see your diploma, and how much it cost. Because I was all paper thin, and there were certain places where, at that time, the late, 90, when I was even at school, 95, 96, where, I would hear from certain producers who were like, don't say you go to NYU. Like, don't. It's not what we're looking for, like in a production assistant, or because we know it all, we know, like we come out as like, these auteurs, here come 40 auteurs like spilling out of NYU. No one wants you as that. Like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever, film school, the letter, I got to find the letter. I don't know. Where are we?
We're just about at the end, my friend. Because we were talking about your current projects, and yeah. So I guess really, Morgan, the final question is there any final thoughts that you have that you want to like to say, just to put a period at the end of this conversation?
Huh. That's a big question. I guess I've kind of this has jogged sort of so many ideas, but I keep coming back to just I guess the formative time for me when I was in my mid-20s and even earlier, kind of back at when I was at UC Santa Barbara, making these Bolex black and white movies, and then that experience through NYU and the experience of Hurricane Streets, and even the experience of Desert Blue, and like making, just that love of filmmaking, and I think about some of those sort of Jim Jarmusch words, like that process is half of it. Like, never let that not be 50%. Like, it's in these deals, it's a 50-50 deal. Like, there's the financing and there's everything, and then there's that creative, and it's 50-50, and don't let anybody tell you not. Like, which gets marginalized so much as things get more and more commercialized. But I think staying true to that, to the most of anybody's, if young filmmakers are out here or that are listening, with regard to like breaking into this industry, or how do you get a movie made, or how do you become a director, or how do you, and I really feel like it's staying true to that craft, and today we can do so much. A movie Tangerine was shot on an iPhone, like editing software comes with this shit, like, that also allows for a lot of crap to get made because anybody can make a movie. But if you have that passion and that idea, like, do it, man. Greenlight yourself. I'm about to try to greenlight myself again, pushing 50, because
It's never too late, Morgan.
It's also, there's just something there. Like, it's like you get to, I don't know, man. You get to work. I don't know if it's like a band or working with your friends, or because it could be a hobby. I think in this business it gets hard when you have to make ends meet and you kind of have to do it trying to direct. That's a hard spot, It's tough. It's tough out there. So I guess the other side is if MTV comes knocking and says you want to do an hour-long documentary, say yes.
I really do like that saying you have. You keep saying is greenlight yourself. I'm a big fan of the work of James Altucher, who has that book Choose Yourself. It's especially in today's entrepreneurial economy, I think you have to basically greenlight yourself, choose yourself. Because I think a lot of people have been waiting around, and they basically are just like, when is somebody going to choose me? And sometimes, well, actually, most of the time, most people don't get picked. You have to sort of run with it. But you touched on something too when you said a lot of crap gets made. Oh yeah, a lot of crap. I mean, I get stuff sent to me all the time, and I can within 5 seconds I can tell if this was somebody threw this together on their iMac or on their iPad, or if somebody actually took the time to set up a shot, get a colorist, get a real editor, get a real cinematographer, get a real actress, all that stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that I see, just there's a reason why it wasn't being made. And often, and as you know, Morgan, it all starts with the script. Because if the script is bad, it's like starting a race with 4 flat tires.
Our production teacher back at NYU, a guy named Bill Riley, who passed away, he was known for saying that script is coin of the realm. And that always stuck with us at school there, like that the script is the coin of the realm. And then Boris Fruman, our directing teacher, would always say, strange is good. And that always kind of stuck. Like, go for something that's, go against the ordinary, and that was in casting, that was in location, that was in camera angle. Like, take what you're supposed to do and scrap it and look for something that's uniquely different. So I still kind of like those little adages. Another funny story, just a tidbit, is that I'm, with my name, Morgan Freeman, I went to film school with Steve McQueen. So try that on. We're in the same class. And it was just funny stories. I was Morgan Freeman then too. I didn't add the J until after Sundance, because he was just kind of arriving too. Like, my parents weren't like giant electric company fans, or I can't remember when that even sort of peaked. But that was such a weird time where, when Hurricane Streets won Sundance, CNN had this thing called the Dennis Michaels Hollywood Minute, where he hosted a 1-minute bit on Hollywood, and they ran the entire minute on Morgan Freeman, the actor, having just won Sundance. So,
yeah, because he came to the scene late for an actor, right? Because I don't think he became big till he was in his 40s.
He didn't. I think it was. I mean, there was, obviously Driving Miss Daisy, but I think it was Glory, and then it was that same period. It was kind of in I think 90, 93, 94, 95, somewhere in there was when he sort of blossomed as a movie star. And then I was like, came out of Sundance as Morgan Freeman, the director, and it was just a bunch of confusion. So I put my middle initial in to just figured he was there first.
I made sure to say the J in the intro too. I was like, I was going to mention it too. I was like, imagine he gets it tons of times. Like, Morgan Freeman's here? Oh, Morgan J. Freeman. Okay.
It's funny that that's the question that I get like everywhere all the time, and the one that I roll my eyes to probably so often. Then I'm the one who had to tag it on at the end of this. So read what you may into that.
Morgan, where can people find you at online?
I guess. Oh, I know. At MJ Free on Twitter is my handle there, and that's probably the best place. Since I'm on a Facebook, I'm on a what am I on? A boycott. Not a boycott.
Hiatus?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 months, and it feels so good.
Yes, it does. I deactivated my Facebook until I needed to go back, because I'm a member of all these private groups, and I had to go back on, and I hate it with a passion. I wish I could just delete it completely.
Yeah, I'm going to just create a smaller group for family and friends, have something for family and friends for updates and for photos of our daughter and just that type of stuff. And then I enjoy Twitter for sort of business stuff or show-related stuff, and it's just much less, I don't get into these, I might have quit because of politics. I can't tell, but I was getting into I didn't know I had so many friends that had so many guns. So I had to just like not engage because I wasn't sleeping. I was just angry.
You know what, Morgan? That's what Facebook does. I don't even talk politics. By the way, I think somebody who hosts their own podcasts, who you've been on, I think they may have sent you a Facebook friend request. So sorry about that.
Oh, no
but honestly, like, I don't talk about politics at all. I don't talk about religion. It's all about film stuff with me. Like, my Twitter is the same exact way. I don't see, I don't want to get into fights with anybody. I just want to be the weird film guy. But people pull me into stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like people post stuff like, if anybody does this or an idiot, blah, blah. I'm like, my God, when did Facebook become so angry, man? Like, Jesus, everyone take it easy. This is just, a social platform, for just, telling people that, we're eating ice cream at or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. Life is, it's like, I don't know. I mean, if it's like the ordinary life is the only one worth living, or whatever the adage is about, like, not needing to worry about what my life looks like on social media, or get so caught up on what other people's lives look like on social media. Like, there's an addiction in there, and And then those conversations, all the opinionated stuff that comes flying in, like, I don't know. I don't feel like my observations and thoughts need to actually be vetted through however many people I clicked accepted. Like it's like sometimes I think about it, it's like all these people, not just from high school, but like all through the different phases of careers, and like that when I do one of these updates, it goes into all their threads. Like I don't know. Part of me wants to just kind of unplug from that, and it felt great.
Yeah, I just stick with Twitter. I mean, you and I met through Twitter, and that's the way I want to keep it, is just all Twitter. And I don't even talk, you know what I mean? It's just all business stuff, posting about the podcast and me, you know, posting about other people's stuff like that, other people's Kickstarters
Right.
and whatever else, you know, and it's done me very well so far. You know, Lady Gaga follows me. So,
Oh, well, there you go. Fuck. That's no joke.
Yeah, she's got the most Twitter followers, so I must be doing something right.
Absolutely, man. Well, this has been awesome. I'm now. I guess you're gonna get some kind of producer credit on my next movie, because I feel like I'm impassioned to go write more than just exterior dot. You know,
Morgan, if you need any help with your next movie, please give me a call. I'm dead serious. I will help you any way I can.
Awesome. Well, I so appreciate that, Dave, and thank you for this.
So everyone, you can find me at davebullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. Morgan, I want to say thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man.
My pleasure. Take care, buddy.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.